I think we've all known each other before. Katie, thank you for coming back again this month. So we will jump right in. We may have some last minute people joining us, so help me look for online people. But we'll jump right in. I have questions unless anyone is just jumping at the bit to start the discussion if they got something they really have to say.
I have one question. Why is it called the 5 wounds?
That was the first question.
Oh, I know.
She knows. Okay.
Artwork, Christ is always portrayed in the crucifix form with 5 wounds. His 2 hands, his 2 ankles, and a cut
Oh, okay.
on his proper right side.
Yeah.
But how does it apply to the story? That's my question.
Good question.
That's a good question.
Because I knew it was
It's
because he's redoing the Christ. Yes and no, there's more to it than that.
There's gotta be more wounds than those. That's what I think.
And like at the end, when they said, when he comes to the conclusion that it's not about the suffering, it's about the love that Christ loves, you know. So then I'm trying to think, well, what are the 5 loves in his or in the story or whatever? I don't know.
Well, I heard him say that at the very, very end, which by the way, I finished about 10 minutes ago. But had my headphones out all day. He said he realized that it's when you understood the pain of others.
Okay.
Right at the very end, right near the very end, Amadeo says it's when you understand the pain of others. So I think the wounds could be your own wounds and the wounds of the people who you love and who are nearest to you.
There's also there are 5 emotional wounds that are part of, as far as I can tell, some form of Catholicism and the thinking. There's things like betrayal, humiliation, abandonment, and I can't remember the other 2. I should have written them down, but anyway, and I think the characters all portray those different 5 wounds.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there.
Yeah, he embodies abandonment, humiliation. I wish somebody look him up. So I think one is betrayal, humiliation, abandonment.
We have no Catholics there.
Deeply cutting.
I'll check.
Deeply cutting that scar you for life. And these people have been scarred, and the current people around them are scarred in different ways.
I'll look it up while you guys are talking.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, so I had a hard time with this book because I am not a religious person, and I don't have a lot of use for this type of religion where you are encouraged to harm yourself. So it just is interesting to me. It took a long time for me to accept it as a device from the authors, clearly leading us through this. It took me a long time to accept it. I don't know that I ever did, but it is interesting. And I think the 5 wounds seen as emotional damage.
Here they are.
And things that
Rejection, abandonment, humiliation, betrayal, and injustice.
Okay.
So those make sense.
That makes more sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Huge. So I think if you look at each of the main characters here, you can kind of fit them together in a puzzle, and some are committed more than one, and it seems that some they're coming together. They're at the end. I do think it's a hopeful book. I think it ends on a positive note, but
Yeah.
Marks and lows.
Wow. It's a job. Good job. I'm glad he's got, yeah.
Just to clarify about the 5 physical wounds, it's the nail holes in the hands count as 1, the nail holes on the feet count as 2, the wound to the torso from the piercing of the spear to see if he was really dead is 3. The 4th are the wounds around the head from the crown of thorns, and the 5th are the lash marks from flagellation.
lash marks. I never found that, but I knew the lash marks in because he was this part of
I
that.
saw that too, Jamie, when I tried to find it.
when I looked it up, I did find both. Some count each hand as one,
Yeah.
2 in each foot.
That's what I
Right.
found.
So yeah, there's references to
Different,
both ways.
yeah.
Right, but
Which is
then it
kind of
doesn't,
interesting in itself,
yeah,
too.
but then it doesn't count the crown of thorns at all, so that if you count that, then the 5th becomes the flagellation.
Hmm.
Which when they do the procession, they self-flagellate if they're doing it
Right.
seriously.
Right.
I mean, the people who follow Jesus are self-flagellating and making bloody wounds on their backs in some of those really hardcore processions.
I think they still do that, don't they, in Mexico? Don't they still do this traditional crucifixion in Mexico or in Spain?
Yes, they do, and even in like Pilsen neighborhood of Chicago, they do.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Heavily
Yeah.
Hispanic.
Hispanic neighborhoods do it even in America.
Do you
Right.
think anyone actually asks for the nails, or was that fictional?
I've never seen that.
That seems kind of
You've seen
extreme
these
to have.
processions and everything.
Tracy, would you mind sending out the 5 emotional ones to us? I couldn't
sure will.
write fast enough to get those.
Yeah.
I'd love to have
No,
that.
I made note, yep.
Thanks.
You know, it was my impression though that the family itself wasn't that religious. The baby didn't get baptized. I think maybe, and, you know, seeing that there was always a lack of a male father figure, pretty much, you know, Amadeo joined that brotherhood, kind of like how guys join a gang, you know, to have an identity and to be part of something that they feel like they're lacking. Because I don't think it's that Catholicism encourages that much. I think it's just kind of a way they've latched onto it and interpret it. Because he didn't try and, they didn't do anything with the family, with their religion or anything, which you would have thought. You didn't hear the mother, his mom talking about religion.
Right, no, I do think he was latching on to something with his Tio, his uncle.
Right.
Mosquito, right.
The general procession and flagellation that, it's just weird.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
It says in the book it wasn't sanctioned by what you might call the
Right.
normal Catholic Church. Remember the priest
Okay.
called up and said something and then just kind of signed off. They really aren't supposed to be doing that, I don't think anymore. That's my impression.
Right.
That's kind of like, all right, you're doing it, we'll just look the other way, but we don't really endorse this type of thing, so.
Sue's got her hand up.
I noticed
Oh, Sue.
online, they have a casting call for next year's cast, if you go online.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, and this is at the Church of the Shrine of the 5 Wounds of our Lord Jesus Christ. And I'm not sure where that is. I think it's in Portugal,
Oh,
but they're doing a casting call if anybody's raring to go.
Well,
That
you know,
amazes me.
in Germany, they do the Passion Play.
Right.
Once every 10
It's on right
years.
now. My chum just came back from it.
Yeah, and somebody has to be Jesus there too, but I don't think.
They
there's
don't,
any real
they
males
don't.
there. It's not quite the same thing, so, yeah.
So
I-
why do you
I thought it was-
Amadeo- What's that?
I thought it was interesting. There are 5 generations involved, and I was wondering if it symbolized a wound within each generation, or potentially. I guess Connor actually is the latest generation. I don't see him having a wound yet, but maybe that's the thing that we're supposed to think about. What the could be's are. And each
Oh,
generation was wounded in one way or another, and that kept carrying through. Maybe Connor will be the deal breaker.
I was in my head, I was trying to figure out how you got 5 generations, but the uncle is the great uncle, isn't it? So-
Yeah, he's the brother of Yolanda's father,
Mhm.
so he's the oldest generation.
Yeah.
Yolanda wasn't even all that old, really.
Right.
She was in her 50s. Yeah.
Well, it's not old.
No,
Yeah, this group is
not for these generations coming. Yeah.
So why do you think Amadeo was so drawn to being part of this Good Friday performance and felt like, as we've said, the family didn't seem that religious, but here he is jumping in this and gonna be Jesus and feels it's gonna redeem him somehow? Why? Why did he do that?
I do think he was searching for a way to be better, and
Yeah,
maybe
he
he
was.
saw that as a commitment. And it is meant to be a higher level of commitment, not just like get up Monday and say, oh, yeah, I'm not gonna drink today. But maybe the commitment within the brotherhood that drew him in, and they expected him to behave. So maybe he just saw that over, and of course, the whole message of Christ's redemption in some way. And so maybe he just hoped it would take.
Rub off, right?
It rub off, or that maybe he felt too. I thought he thought if he himself committed to it, it would be a bigger commitment than he's 33, right? You can't ignore that he's
Right.
33.
Right.
That's an absolute deliberate thing.
Yeah.
So maybe he just finally thought it would work. That I don't know.
Go Sue.
I think he felt very guilty and he wanted this uncle to recognize him. And since the uncle was involved with that, I think he thought by becoming the victim there, he would redeem himself to himself and also to this uncle that he really knew was going to hold the family together.
Good point.
Great.
And he wanted to be the best Jesus. I think that's why he asked for the nails too. And it said he was pounding nails into the wood to make it heavier so that his burden was heavier. So he just wanted, that's where he thought he could achieve, I guess.
I don't know about you all, but I found this to be one of the most depressing books I have read in a long time.
Yes, thank you.
I mean, extraordinarily depressing. I at every certain turns, I would expect it to start be on the upward arc, and then it
Somebody
wasn't.
would get a clue.
It never
Somebody
was. It just was constantly bad news, constantly, right up until the end. Even the end wasn't all that great, for everybody. It was kind of just okay. And I think what was so depressing about it to me is that I think it was very authentic. I think it was
so
very
too.
realistic. I think it was a very real story.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it was one of the hardest. I listened to it as I'm walking my dogs, and it was like, oh no, this is what's just bringing me down for the whole day. As I'm walking at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's like, do I really want to do this? But I wanted to finish it because I was looking forward to the discussion with this group and hearing how you all reacted to it.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you.
There were just
may-
so many bad decisions. I
Oh,
mean, at
absolutely.
every
Everybody in there made bad decisions.
boy.
It may be that it's like other books we've read where you're right, Jamie, it is depressing, but in reading the afterword or the acknowledgements or whatever it was, I made a note here. I was going to copy the acknowledgements pages and I didn't do it. But it had a lot of information of what her resources were and people she worked with in terms of writing this story. And one of them, actually, there really is a Smart Starts program. It's a United Way co-sponsored program in that state. And I agree with you, Jamie. I think a lot of this story was probably not unrealistic about the things that occur. What happens with people in certain communities. But it's written as partly informational to say to people, hey, look, this is what goes on.
Yeah, many of us are in education, or we've been in the social services of one sort or another. I've worked with so many at-risk families and at-risk kids. I mean, this was nothing new to me, but to have it all, to see these bad decisions just laid out one after the other after the other. I mean, every single person that was depicted made such terrible decisions.
She said
So it was really hard.
Were they all different stories?
No, She wrote an article in the New Yorker.
Okay, and so
That's
then
what-
everything
and it
came
just
from that
expanded
one
from there.
article that I didn't know it was.
Actually, in the story, there was another character in the story. And
Oh,
that
in the
character
New
doesn't come out in the book very much at all.
No.
Not at all, I don't think, yeah.
I actually thought that someone made a good decision in the book. His Ryan's original decision wasn't so great, but in the end, he was the one who seemed to step up
Mhm.
and provide some hope at the end of the
Right.
story.
Right, and his
Of all
family,
people.
and his family, his mom just embraced
Right,
the whole
that's what I'm saying,
situation, yeah. Good people.
I had a hard time with
I had
that.
a hard time.
I'm embracing the whole thing, and this is great, I don't know, I know she's a nurse, I know, but still, it's like,
I thought Angel made a great decision early on. She went to that school or whatever. they
Well,
had
that's true,
Working
yes.
to get extra help.
Right.
And she's the only one with any sense in that family. Well, Yolanda's okay, but I mean, she made that decision to
She was young.
get herself better, in a better situation. So I thought that was a great decision. And
Yeah.
I don't blame her for telling Brianna where to go. But I do think she made a good decision, which I think gives you overall hope, even earlier on in the book, that things may improve, may
Turn
work
around.
out, even if it's not in that specific. And it took Ryan a while to come around, but you know, they were working on it. A lot of it is just so many emotions. I mean, my gosh, Angel's pregnant, she's 16.
15,
15, 16, and fighting with her mother. I mean, yeah. But I didn't see it as, I had trouble with Amadeo. I think I was really concerned he was not going to make it. And I was really concerned about that car accident. So, yeah, that somehow that one more tragedy would occur to this poor family.
I mean, all of a sudden, that magically poured little Connor, nothing happened. That was amazing.
And I think she said it earlier that all of these things, like you said, she starts out 15. I mean, like I said, these are no new scenarios.
Right.
I mean, we've experienced them ourselves, or we've lived with our own children through that, or we know other people. So putting it all together in one story was maybe a lot, but.
Yeah, I know, and probably several of us or all of us maybe like can imagine specific family or friends in these roles, and that makes it even harder and more depressing, as you were saying.
I thought that the adults, I thought Yolanda and Marissa and Marianne, they were all rather tolerant of what Angel was going through. So I thought that part was good.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people live this way. I think people live paycheck to paycheck, their cars break down. You read about people, just an article the other day, they can't get to tech school because they don't have public transportation. And I think everybody's just a paycheck away from utter disaster, far more frequently than we think or imagine. Healthcare is not accessible, good food is not accessible.
Right.
It's just, I think this is very common in our country. And
Well,
I think it's
we have-
generational.
We have
And
working homeless, which is ridiculous. We have
Well,
working
yeah.
homeless people.
so you're talking about the Alice, I'm going to make a plug, the Alice population. The Alice population in Door County is what you're talking about. And
Absolutely.
that's why I was excited to see United Way mentioned in the acknowledgements, because those are the people United Way is trying to help here in our county. And there are 30,000 people in our county. 1,200 people contribute to United Way.
Let me
Just think on
tell-
that.
let me say what Alice is. If you don't know what Alice stands for, it's
Oh, thank you,
asset
Katie.
limited, income constrained, employed.
Employed, right.
Asset limited, income constrained, employed.
Employed.
And so many of these people have not enough food for their families and are homeless right here in Door County.
And just all over the country. I just don't think this is unusual. I think this story is probably common. I really do.
Except for the crucifixion.
The crucifixion.
That's uncommon. Yeah. That's pretty uncommon.
Do you think any parts of this particular story were particular to the setting of New Mexico?
Yes, I do. If you've ever been in northern New Mexico, around the Four Corners, that's really depressing there. And I kept thinking that's sort of where this was set. And I don't know that that's true. In reality, I think if you read in the back, they talk a little bit where it is. But you look at that area, and that's exceedingly, that's where I thought that whole family was from, basically. So,
New Mexico is a very poor state. I think,
Well-
or has a lot of abject poverty in it, both indigenous and then not even immigrants, longtime
No, it's-
established residents who have been there but are Hispanic background. Yeah,
Which I kind of got the impression this family was.
long time there.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I
They
don't
were
think we're
Hispanic
talking
background,
recent
you know,
illegal.
Amadeo didn't
immigrants.
speak Spanish. He couldn't read the script he was given because it was in Spanish.
I thought it was interesting that, he tried to start his own business and ended up without a job. And then the job that he could get was at Lowe's, and people, peep all this disdain on these giant chains, but they're putting a lot of people to work, it seems
yeah,
like.
right.
So, when I hear about boycotts and people I know who won't go to Walmart and whatever,
Right.
there's just a dichotomy there because it's the only place a lot of people can find to work.
My question was, why did he wait so long to go to Lowe's? But I think it might have been his alcoholism, and that when he was in that accident, all of a sudden, that enough was enough, and then he was ready to move on. But I just thought, well, Lowe's has been there forever, he didn't try, so.
But don't you think his mother enabled him
Yeah.
forever?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's not a man. He's just being enabled by somebody and bailed out constantly. And I don't
Yeah.
really, maybe the accident changed him. As far as I'm concerned, he irritated me a lot.
But Angel said after the accident, you'll stop drinking,
Yeah.
You
well,
will
he had
stop.
to.
and he had
Yeah,
to,
right.
because she said, we need you,
I know,
and you will stop.
I know.
And I think he finally, this is almost a year later, not quite, it goes what, Lent to Lent or Easter
Yeah.
to Easter,
Yeah.
could-
Yeah.
something, one of those.
And
So it's just, I think he finally made it. There were so many times for him that he was coming to a realization,
right.
the one he mentioned later in the book, that it's not about suffering, it's about seeing the pain of others
Right.
and the pain that you cause others.
And I think that she was enabling him because she was terrified that he was going to go the route of his cousin and her husband
With the drugs.
Oh,
with the drugs and kill himself, basically. And what did you think about the fact that her husband had you find out that he turned out to have been gay? That was it was such a suddenly it was just like, oh, where'd this come from?
I forgot that part.
I felt like they were trying to fit every negative that could happen in the life in one film. And then just when you thought you've done it all, oh, and now he's saying, oh, and now the two girls are, it was just too much of that continually happening to me. And you talk about him going to Lowe's, and I hope it all works out, but that's only a year. He wasn't able to maintain anything for any length of time, so we'll see,
Well,
just
that's,
see.
if she writes a sequel, then it'd be nice to know.
Oh,
what
yeah.
happened.
Right.
But that's also another part of when someone's had addictions and things. I mean, again, she's just showing you what can happen. They can't get refocused a lot of times. And even though they focus for a short period of time, they
Right.
relapse and it changes all again.
Yeah, it's just like hitting yourself on the head as you read now you know.
The teacher seems, like this wonderful woman, but she certainly was a mess too, wasn't she?
Well, she had her own wounds. I think
Oh my goodness, she certainly did.
she had the wound of not feeling loved and not feeling that she fit in and she was lonely.
Yeah,
But she tried hard. I think she,
and
you
she
know,
took it out on
did a
the
lot of good.
girls. She took it out on the girls in a kind of strange way.
In the end, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what did you think of her and Amadeo? Is there a way at all that that's a good idea?
You know what I think?
No.
No.
Bad idea.
She had her own chapter.
And I had my hopes. Didn't you all have your hopes that that was gonna be a good
Whatever
thing
that
for her
character
and
is.
turn him around and have a, I was thinking, well,
exactly
this is
what I
a
thought.
sappy book, you know, sort of toward the middle. I was thinking,
I
this
thought,
is a sappy book because it's
Sharon
gonna have this
kept asking,
happy ending.
What happens here? What happens here? I said, you'll find out. And it's pretty predictable. So,
I thought that was a bit drug in.
Yeah.
I did also think that Angel's lesbianism was a bit, I agree with you, Karen. I was surprised to see it twice and it just seems, I don't know
Forced a
how
little bit.
the uncle or whoever.
No, I didn't
was.
either. This was kind of gratuitous.
But I've
wasn't
been trying to decide, is it just that, does it just seem too statistically improbable to have in the same family? Is it just, is she just experimenting as a teenager? So that's what we're looking at? Is it, I just thought it was sort of drug in. And I just wasn't prepared for it. I don't think the author prepared us enough. The uncle or whoever was the man, I can't remember his relationship.
Yolanda's husband.
Yeah, okay. I think that was, it explains some of his difficulties, which were anger and all of that, but I just don't see how it furthered our understanding. Well, it did of Angel. It's a different side of her we didn't see, but I don't think the author worked us there sufficiently to accept it as a reader. I agree with you. It seemed drug in.
I think maybe it was also to show Lisette, that other mom that Angel was friends with, you know, how they were hooking up. And then all of a sudden, we find out that her baby was taken away and that she was a heroin addict too. So I think, you know, those kind of things, people don't know how to deal with it. And then they have those deaths of despair, or, you know, the taking drugs.
Yeah, yeah, it's.
Maybe she was trying to show that.
Yeah,
I think Angel was just ready for any expression of affection.
Right.
I think that was a lot of it.
I think so too.
Wasn't it a kick in the butt when she found out how old Ryan really was?
Yeah.
15, was it?
He was just 15.
Yeah.
One thing I thought was an interesting juxtaposition was Ryan and all his confidence and chirpiness and, you know, cheerful and everything versus Angel, you know, with all the weight of the world on her and everything. But he's like, hey, baby, oh, you know, everything was wonderful. But I think you could see how he had a parent, his mom,
Yeah.
when you met her, you realized that she was boosting him. Not, I mean, Amadeo's mom loved him, but in a way, like you said, she enabled his flaws. But this guy, he seemed like he was very confident. Yeah. So.
Well,
He was white.
whole different life. Yeah.
no, right. Yeah.
He, you know, I think didn't Angel have trouble with her stepfather? And her mother didn't believe her when she tried to tell her mother that the stepfather, you know, that Ryan has never lived through any of that, or having to live with all the trauma that was going on in Angel's family. Very different. What's that called, Jamie? White something. Privilege. White privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was white, middle class.
Sure.
Seemed pretty smart.
Yeah, but seemed nice. He seemed genuinely nice and really thoroughly falling in love with Connor. Yeah, and understood aspects of Angel, like he did figure out that she lied to him about not being the father. And, you know, so he seems very capable. I don't know that they'll get together, but I think they might figure out how to raise this child.
Be in his life. Both of them be in his life.
Yeah.
one thing I thought of too, like all the unwed mothers who maybe don't know the history of the father, like that young man had, you know, something wrong with his chest,
Mhm.
that
Hmm.
she would have never have known to be aware of that or to be looking for that. You can just see disadvantage piled on disadvantage for those young people starting out, you know.
Why do you think Angel was so resistant to her mother trying to kind of reconcile things?
She didn't want to be disappointed again. You know, she just didn't want to experience that disappointment. Everyone had always disappointed her.
Nobody could disappoint her more than her dad.
Yeah,
And
but it was,
hadn't Marissa had a lot of boyfriends?
oh,
and-
a lot.
Yeah.
And
In
it's
and
babies
out,
having
and-
babies. Her mother
And then
was
the
really
final
young.
one was about to abuse. Yeah, she just, that, you know, I think she had just had it. And she said, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
That's enough. I can imagine that,
No trust. How can she trust her mother?
right?
It was
Right.
gonna take time, and she has to learn to trust her
Well,
father, which she's
It'll
doing.
take time.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And her mother didn't seem that interested in Connor.
True.
So that really
I remember,
disappointed her
yeah.
too.
Yeah, her mother it was unclear whether her mother was sort of always late to things or didn't show up at the school, or whether she didn't want her to show up at the school, or whether it was, you know, mother's ego was bruised too, as being the rejected mother. Everybody had their wounds, my goodness. Just-
Blood all over the place.
Mhm.
There was not a lot of joy in that family. Grandma was a good person.
Who was?
Grandma, you know, I
Grandma.
mean, she may have babied Amadeus, you know, a little too much, taking care of him a little too much, but I think she was just trying to hold things together as the only way she knew how, and how she was brought up. To, you know, it's always the mothers that perpetuate the weak sons, you know, that whole thing, generation to generation, not necessarily, you know, the entire family or the fathers. The mothers they do it, you know.
Could you understand Yolanda's decision to try to not tell the family of her diagnosis right away?
And how they could not figure it out, or that at least there was something
It
drastically.
did seem a little clueless about that.
They're so
No, I
self-absorbed
didn't.
in themselves,
Yeah.
you know, they can't see anybody else's
Mm.
issues, you know, so yeah.
Right.
And they denied it.
No, there are.
Oh, yeah,
You're
they
absolutely
don't
right.
want,
They don't want to
they,
tell
they,
anybody.
I don't know if it's that they have to learn how to deal with it themselves before they let other people in.
Well, if you know you're gonna
Mhm.
die, you want to tell everybody that. Some people don't want to.
No,
Other people,
absolutely not.
other people will spell their
Mhm.
everything.
Yeah.
Right, and not only that, but they all looked at her as the strong one.
Yeah.
And so you become an enabler of that person, always being, you know, the strong one. And I see it in so many families. I saw it in my own family. Anyone who has a person with Alzheimer's in their family. I mean, how long did it take before you realized that the spouse had been, you know, enabling that person to be seem much more productive and with it than they really were.
Right, right.
And Amadeo did say he had seen it. Somebody, I can't remember which character said, didn't you notice it? Or,
It was Marissa.
okay,
Marissa
Marissa
was
said,
the
didn't
one.
you see this and
Yeah.
do something about it? And he says, well, he was thinking, I don't know if he said it out loud or was thinking it, but said he did notice that she was doing this or they'd fall or she did this and did, but none of us ever wants to admit, like she was saying with somebody with Alzheimer's, that things are really much worse. You don't want to deal with it. You just don't want to, you don't want to admit that something really must be serious. And it's not as if this family didn't have enough problems. But no, I can understand her reluctance to, or wanting to choose her own time. And I agree that she probably had to absorb it herself. I mean, she had been given months to live. That's a lot to absorb. Not yet time to share.
Yeah. But it pissed me off that she was still driving, knowing
Yeah.
that she could
Yeah.
have a seizure at
It's
any
bad.
moment.
Yeah. She could have easily been the one to have the accident.
Exactly.
Yes. And the coyote, so what about the coyote?
Yes.
Yeah, who did the coyote represent?
I don't know. I mean, the coyote is what really saved Amadeo. In the sense that he had that accident because he saw the coyote, which then led to his come to Jesus moment, so to speak, that he had to quit drinking. And,
But hadn't the
it's a
coyote
symbol
appeared
of all
earlier?
their difficulties.
Yeah,
Hadn't the coyote appeared earlier in the book? as
Yeah.
well?
isn't,
Angel was driving.
Angel was driving, that foreshadowing of that accident.
Yeah.
Um,
isn't that perhaps part of a mystical belief in the culture?
Yeah,
Does anybody know?
That's right,
I think so.
but in Hispanic.
Does anybody know
Yeah,
what it
I think
means
so.
or symbolizes? Or?
In tribal culture
That's true.
Yeah,
and a mystic.
yeah, or, and not to mention, it can also just be real. I mean, there's coyotes everywhere.
Sure.
So when you start to put it into a story, though, it always should take on important, I mean, the author does it deliberately, so it goes along that line of being absolutely reasonable to coyotes show up on the middle of nowhere in the road, and also having significance throughout the story and in their lives, and maybe taken as a sign.
Like deer around
What I
here.
was gonna say, we can drive home and have a dinner.
Yeah.
Take it as a sign.
Well,
Right.
apparently in dreams, reading from, the
Yeah.
search engine, apparently in dreams, coyotes represent many things, including freedom, joy, courage, changes, humor,
That's what
but
she-
deceit as well.
They're called the trickster.
And they are trickster, yeah, coyotes. So I think with the other religion in the book as well, it can easily take on a spiritual overtone or a symbol of, well, you mentioned change in your.
That's what I think it probably
It
meant.
certainly brought about a change in Amadeo. Or your own spirit animal. I don't know. It's just, I didn't see it as misplaced. I thought it was, I like it.
Here's an interesting take. This is the very last thing. It lists all the things you just said. It says, finally, the coyote is a consummate opportunist. Capable of both hunting and scavenging, the coyote does what it needs to do in order to survive. For this reason, coyotes may be connected with tenacity, stubbornness, vitality, resourcefulness, or thievery. While scavenging may earn the coyote a negative reputation, nature's scavengers play a very important role within their ecosystems, and the coyote is no exception. I think that aspect of coyote is interesting in relation to this book. They're also known for monogamous pairing.
Well, that doesn't relate much. What did we think of the character Lizette?
A user.
Sad.
It's very pathetic, I think. Yeah.
She had nobody, really, nobody,
I mean, she had nobody.
nobody.
And then Angel says, but maybe one adult having taken the time with her might have made a difference. She feels really bad. She said, just one person. She was so angry that Brianna wouldn't be that one person this young woman's gonna be homeless. She's at the whim of everybody around her. She can't.
Right. And when Angel met up with the gal who had been in Smart Starts, and she said, "Oh, you haven't heard about Lizette?" I was sure she was going to say she had died.
I was too.
Yeah.
But she lost her child and
Lost her
was either back on or had taken up serious heroin.
Isn't it funny how they refer to it as having lost her child? She'd lost, the way the friend put it.
Was
She'd
taken.
lost her
She was
child.
taken. Yeah,
Or she was taken, yeah.
taken. Yeah, but she did. I think they did also say she lost. Yeah.
Well, and like what Jane mentioned, I kind of wrote this down too, or copied it from the book there. When Angel was thinking about Lizette and said there were a million moments when events might have unfolded differently for Lizette, when a word, a gesture, a smile from a caring adult might have changed her course.
Mhm.
That's where teachers come in. I'm not saying teachers have to do this, that's not what I'm saying, but there are times, and you just never know that ripple. That ripple is that teachers can do that without, I don't mean they're social workers, that's not their job. But sometimes taking a child seriously or listening just for a moment, just or whatever it is, it's amazing how frequently teachers affect a child's life.
I got a baby named after me. Students that I worked with for 3 years. He went to boys thing, Rawhide. They kicked him out. He came back to our school. I worked with him from 3 o'clock till 6 o'clock in the afternoon for years, and just to get graduated. He married young. He had a baby, but the next time I saw him, they named her after me. It was like, okay, I did something right.
My work here is done.
Yeah, yeah.
So yes.
Make a huge difference. And so that was insightful on Angel's part. She's growing, learning. And I was talking with another person about this book. She didn't come tonight, but she said, who do you think the hero is in this book? I mean, who is the hero would ordinarily be what? The one that changes, or the protagonist, or what do we have? Who do you think is?
Angel. In
Yeah,
my opinion.
Angel?
I would say Angel too.
Yeah,
I would very much so.
I think
She
it's.
was my hero anyway.
I think we're led to think that this book is Amadeo's story. But he does change. We don't know if it'll stick.
Right.
You know, nonetheless, he does come out on the other end. But Angel has done so much growing. She's accepting Ryan, she's accepting her mother a little more, beginning. I don't know, but yeah, it was an interesting question. Who's the hero?
I was just gonna say, because,
To me, that was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Because
I don't
she
think
just
that's
could
a
have
hero.
projected all that.
good question.
What?
I said, I don't know if anybody's a hero. When you think of hero,
Well, the protagonist,
No,
the protagonist,
Protagonist is probably a better word.
who's the character in this book that we are meant to be the most
Aligned.
engaged with or following, and follows that arc of traditional literature, which I believe is change takes place. So I would make the argument for Amadeo, but I have an equal one for, maybe they're dual track, Angel certainly, because Yolanda didn't change that much. The others came through, but yeah, it was just an interesting quick question. She said, well, who do you think is the hero? Meeting protagonist, I think.
Do you have hope for any or all of these characters?
It's
we have
hard to
hope.
hope.
It's not gonna do us any good to have hope for them, but we have hope.
You have to
Hope
have
for all
hope.
of them.
You have to have hope that something that will
Yeah.
turn out well.
Maybe-
But I'm not sure I can wait around.
Maybe we're meant to have faith.
No, that's true.
I do think with Ryan and his mother's reaction, because we were didn't you kind of think it was going to be bad? Because he said, oh, I told my mother, and oh, she's crying and crying. And then she comes in and she's just so ecstatic to meet the baby and Angel. So that to me is really,
That was pretty important.
I think Angel's going to do well. I think she's going to have some difficulties, but I think Ryan's family's going to help. I think she probably will finish school. She's back at school. She's thinking about it, or at least she's thinking about it. I think, and Ryan's going to go to school. I do think Angel will do okay. I think Amadeo might fall off the wagon every now and then. But I think,
Great.
as I understand
Ryan's
it,
gonna
that's
be a-
absolutely what people do.
Ryan's gonna
They
be a
have- they
news
have-
anchor and make lots of money because he's already going to media camp.
Yeah. Media
Yeah,
camp.
remember, he's gonna be in media.
What about Connor? Life will entail.
I'm hoping for the best.
I'm hoping he doesn't have a girlfriend and get pregnant at 16.
Right.
That really can be a pattern. I mean,
Right.
but see, that's what I think Angel will help there. I do, and I
it will depend on what she does with her life, what I
Correct.
think will
Yeah,
happen.
I
with
think
Connor.
so.
Yeah. 'Cause right now, she's really engaged with him and is, you know, you feel like she's gonna make her life around him as well to get him grown.
One thing I had a little
Maybe.
trouble with,
It's tough.
is the white knight coming in and saving these people of color,
Oh,
Ryan,
Yes.
and the family with money and all of these wonderful. I mean, that is a difficult, it is a difficult thing. I did think it might have been better if it had been simply more of a neighborhood person who came in and maybe without the finances behind them, but perhaps steady jobs in the family and could have come in and done a similar thing. I just, it would be interesting. I just sort of flashed through my mind, oh, look, another white savior. There's too many books like that. I mean, we all grew up with Westerns, right? I mean, To Kill a Mockingbird. I mean, a lot of these things are, it was just a flash
I'm not confident that Angela is gonna accept him though. Remember, she told her dad, no way, not gonna.
oh no, I
happen to
don't
her
think they're
mom."
gonna end up together, but I think they're gonna still support her. They said, we'll finance, we'll do this until Ryan gets through college and he's,
Yeah.
no, I think they're gonna support. I don't think they're gonna marry. And she said, no way.
Right.
Well, if she's a lesbian, let's hope that it doesn't work out that way.
Right, well, that's true. And I don't know that she is.
I don't know that she knows
either,
it,
but I
don't think she
agree.
knows it.
She wanted Lizette to come, but it was just a fleeting, no, but did anybody else think that too?
Yeah.
I just thought,
Again,
who's the same? I just would like to, and I didn't read any interviews or anything, that's, the neighborhoods are, she goes to school, she went to school, she met him at school, it's
Muted.
not that it wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
It just,
Because of you.
Wasn't she trying to sleep around with a whole bunch of people?
She did.
yeah, she did.
I mean,
that was sort of like a
That was
wasn't it? Yeah.
Somebody's got their hand up.
Oh, Jane.
Jane,
Oh. I was listening to what Jane had to say. That was an interesting idea you had, but it's interesting that I'm guessing it was written by a person of Hispanic background. So it's interesting that she chose to
Yeah.
have this
Mhm.
person come in who is a white, middle class fellow saving the day, so to speak. I wonder what her thinking was in doing that. Since
I
she's
didn't
from,
see it so much as saving the day as just demonstrating a contrast in different types of families.
yeah, but
That's
there
how
must have been.
I thought, whoa, this kid is just happy-go-lucky, whereas she has so much stacked against her. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Jane. I don't know, it just flashed through my mind.
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting idea, but I'm interested in what her thought was as a person with Hispanic background in having this person be a white middle class person. It's interesting.
Speaking of the author, if she were here, what other questions would we have for the author?
Ooh,
If any.
good question.
Did she pull any of this from her own biographical background?
She did work at the Smart Start or a program similar to that. So that's one thing I listened to this YouTube interview with her and another writer, Claire, somebody, and they talked about that was an experience that she observed a lot of the kids that were
Yes.
pregnant and, striving to get a GED or whatever, and brought a lot of that into the characters that she put in the
Right.
book.
I read that, yeah.
You could ask her if she's gonna write a sequel. That you're not gonna read, but.
That's exactly right. I'd be more interested in her background. I think she did grow up in New Mexico.
She lives in, where's Princeton, New Jersey?
New Jersey, yeah.
She's
teaches
there.
at
I
Princeton.
think she probably teaches, is that
She
what
teaches,
Rutgers
yes.
is?
Yeah, she teaches.
Yeah,
Princeton's just nice to call here,
Yeah,
not close to Piscataway.
yeah. No, I thought it was, it's not a book, as Tracy knows, I struggled with this book.
I really did.
Wait till you get
I
the
was
next one.
whining for weeks.
I was like, this is her first book, right? So
Yes,
heaven only
yes.
knows what she'll write next.
Yes, she, until this, she's only written short stories.
Right.
So as we talked about, this began as a short story, also called The Five Wounds, and it is in her collection of stories called Night at the Fiestas.
Oh, yeah, I was reading about that.
Yeah.
Stories.
So those are short
So
stories,
these are all short stories, yes.
and that was written after the first book?
No, before.
No.
No, this
Before.
was
It was like
Stories
the
before.
prequel.
2015, this was
Okay.
published.
Okay.
And I don't remember the date that was published in the New Yorker. I think it was even prior to 2015.
Yeah, I think so too.
What I think is interesting is, I'm not an author at all, but I know that writing a short story is very different from writing a novel. And I did read several articles about this, and she said she was struggling with that transition, and she said, no, I'm not gonna do it. And her publisher apparently suggested she expand on that story, because specifically, she said, no, it's a short story, I'm done with that, I moved on, and she said she just couldn't envision it, but that somehow the characters kept staying with her, and she thought maybe there's more of a story here. So I just don't think it must be easy.
Did anyone read the short story? I wondered what the short story included.
Cher, did you read this short story?
I read the short story, yeah. So it was very similar to the book, but obviously we didn't have Lizette and we didn't have Yolanda's thing going on, but it was more about the crucifixion itself. And then there was another character that was in the thing that just kind of kept showing up. It was very creepy, I thought.
Was he the coyote?
He might have been, I don't know, they didn't call him that, but he was very creepy and was always like in Amadeo's face, like, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you know.
Oh,
And then when he took Angel to the Murata, you know, women weren't supposed to go there in the short story, he took her there quite early. And this creepy character saw that and saw that she was pregnant. And so that was really bad, you know, kind of thing. So yeah, it was different, but a lot of characters were there, but other characters were not, so.
I'm curious about something. In all of the books that we read, before we choose them, you read to us a little précis on what it was all about. And I wonder if before you even have a talk about a book, if we would reread that same thing, if we would interpret this book is what they said, because I wouldn't have read this book. I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
No, if I heard what a downer it all was, you know, and this is about, it's not that I'm not recognizing a downer kind of thing having value to it, but I'll use a parallel here. I'm an artist by background, and there's a lot of art, like for instance, Munch did the Scream.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want the Scream above my couch.
Yeah.
You know, and so there are things that I can say, this is good, but that doesn't mean I need for them to be, I don't want to dwell on them or live with them, I guess. So I would be curious about that. Is this what this book is really about? Because I don't think we would have picked it.
It did keep me reading, because I kept thinking,
It'll get
something new
better.
is going to happen, you know, so
Good.
you did keep reading, and, you know, I thought it was well written, you know, from that perspective, you know, type of thing, so, yeah.
I don't ever mind downer books.
Oh, I do.
And I don't mind stories, and a lot of times I like to see a movie, even though it's a downer, if I've read the book, and I can do it back and forth. I mean, I can see the movie and then I want to read the book, and I read the book and want to see the movie. I find that because it's all part of life, it doesn't, yes, I can sit and cry, reading some books, I've done that plenty of times, but I don't find it, I never have said I didn't want to read that book. Unlike you, which is, you know, it's just, you and I are different. I can just, I like to read all that stuff. In fact, I'd much rather don't send me to a comedy. I would go to a drama any day before I'd go to a comedy, really, or a musical. I would much rather see a dramatic movie or play.
Or dysfunction. Well, sometimes we have this issue where I like to go watch dysfunctional plays about dysfunctional families.
Yeah, I could go with you too.
It's interesting, I just like.
She just doesn't have the same sort of feeling, because I'll read this play and I'll say, oh, this is this dysfunctional, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
I also don't like to see a lot of blood in movies, so, you know, I'll be silly.
So Todd, how many times have you seen The Glass Menagerie? Okay.
Yeah.
I like that, but I'm just trying to think the other, some of the ones when, and I can't remember the author now,
Eugene O'Neill.
Eugene O'Neill, where he writes all these.
There's an opera.
Where he,
Yeah.
you know, where he writes about his mother in this haze all the time. I just love that playing. We had to go-
But it's 4 hours long.
Actually, we saw it at University of Chicago, as a matter of fact. But the interesting thing about that was that Cher went with me and she says, I said, what'd you think about it, Jeff? Okay, thanks.
Well, Cheryl just made me watch Minata,
Minamata.
and you talk about, I mean, that was, I mean, I didn't even know that was happening in the 70s. That's in Japan, and there was this horrible company that was pouring mercury into the river.
Right.
And I mean, talk
I
about
gotta go.
devastating to see these people, but it was so well done.
Wasn't it?
And it had such a powerful story that if Eugene Smith, the photojournalist, if he hadn't brought that forward,
Mhm.
I don't know,
So
I don't
was
know,
it
I
in the
was,
60s?
I loved it,
It was in the,
70s.
Yeah, would you remember the life when they showed all the Japanese kids that had injected?
yes,
all
that,
this
he
mercury?
was the
That part of
photographer.
that. Yeah.
He
that was
did
part of
that.
And he was doing that in the 70s,
Right.
which.
And he died not long after the riot.
Yeah,
And
Well, yeah, they said
because those
that.
pictures were just amazing.
yeah, he was an amazing
Yeah,
photographer.
it was, yeah.
And Johnny Depp played it very well.
Really?
Oh, God.
Outstanding.
Okay.
Anyway.
I just turned it in yesterday or the day before.
Minamata.
Good.
Same, that reminds me similar too of the mini series they did at Chernobyl.
Yeah.
If anybody saw that, I mean, that is not a happy story to watch, but so well done.
Yeah.
And
So
it's,
well done.
to me, it's things that we need to,
No, that's
we need to
reality.
read about. Yeah, we need to know that these things happen. And that's why this didn't, I mean, like you said, we've all said, these are all things that happens to people all the time.
Because I wondered, the only other thing is, in reading this thing, I kept thinking, if she did work in a situation like this, she's giving a little expose about how young kids live, especially young kids that really have not much of a life and they get pregnant, and we've all seen this. But I had other issues with it, I guess. Amadeo is what killed me.
I just don't see why Angel wouldn't spit out her gum. That just bugs the heck out of me. So, but I know she was betrayed by
She was a teenager. That's all I can say.
Yeah, yeah.
Right,
Well,
right.
and there were several times she kept saying, I have power and I have agency. She did it when Mike was attacking her. And she realized that she had power in that situation, not necessarily to defend herself, but she affected him. And she knew that. And there were one or two other times that she said, I have power. And I think she, of course, she was going to be fired anyway, thrown out of school because of what she said to Brianna about being in bed with, I don't know what she said, with Amadeo. And she said that out loud. And then it came down to not spitting out the gum. And I think she just simply said, no. She stood her ground and she said, no, I don't need this. I am, this is ridiculous. You're doing that and you're mad at me for chewing gum. Yeah, here, take this, you bitch. And, yeah, it did, yeah. I can see it. It was better than hitting her, belting her, or so. I mean, I think, she was just really angry at finding out about Amadeo and Brianna. She was livid, betrayed, utter betrayal.
A lot of similarities between this book and the one that we just read about the family in Japan, where the young daughter and the father who's like a mess, and the mother doesn't really come to her defense, and she has the power because grandma showed her what to do. It's a lot of parallels there.
Yeah.
Dysfunctional families in
Yeah.
in novels these days.
And the generation.
Right, yeah.
I was gonna say, that's real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, generation. But no, I am glad I read this book. I'm with Karen. I don't always read these kinds of things. I find it hard to just keep plowing through.
Yeah.
But this one did finally engage me enough not to I do a lot of this, books, because I need the plot. Do you know how hard it is to find the plot online without paying for it? You know, because nobody wants to give you the serious, genuine plot lines. They don't want spoilers. But there are organizations you can join for money and they will give you that plot. So instead I'm doing this to get the plot. So,
You and all the other high school students that want to plagiarize their paper pay for those things.
oh, absolutely, absolutely, because you get quotes and characters, motifs, themes, topics,
Yes.
and plot summaries. You have to pay for it though.
Any final
That's for the
thoughts
students that
as
wanna
we wrap
do
this
the
one
work.
up?
The cliff notes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any final thoughts?
Well, actually, I'm glad we chose it. You chose it. Somebody chose it. Oh, I kept all of them, gave you one.
Anyone online want to share their ratings out of 5 stars?
3.5.
Yeah, the writing.
There's 3.
Yeah, 3.5.
Gave it a 3.
People in your 0.5s, I don't know if that should be allowed.
2.5.
Goodreads has
You know, as a book reading alone, I give it a 3, but a book for a book club, I'd give it a 4+ because it's a great book for a discussion.
I think this was a good discussion we had, so.
Yeah.
That is a good point, yeah.
Last
That's
time was
why
a good
stories like this do
discussion.
give you much more to discuss and talk about.
I bet you've read a ton of Oprah books then with that.
Oh,
Oprah books always were downers, incredible downers. Not that they weren't good books. Yeah, but I thought, oh my gosh, this can't get any worse.
You get to read this.
Yeah, you're talking about Jonathan Franzen books. Oh my God.
Like the House of Sand and Fog.
Oh, yeah, that one was.
Oh my
Oh.
gosh. And A Fine Balance.
I didn't read that one.
That one took place in India. It was about the caste system.
Oh.
The guy starts
yeah.
out in the middle of the caste system.
Yeah.
And he sees people that are in the lower end of the caste system and says, I'm never gonna be that way. And he ends up the lowest of the lows. In fact, he's on a little scuttle thing and he doesn't even have legs.
Oh my gosh.
It's the saddest book I've ever read. Now, is it a good book? Yes, but I'll never read it again.
I got to go to an Oprah show one time. Was never, here was the topic, spouses who murder.
Oh.
And you're supposed to sit there and clap. I mean, it's like, they have the audience, it's just like, we can know what we're gonna see. They never showed that one.
No.
They never showed that one. Never
I
aired.
Yeah, yes, House of Sand and Fog was incredibly sad, but one of the most memorable books and one of the most best written books. And the movie really did it justice. I mean, it's one of those things where, the movie was as good as the book. I mean, they really did a good job. So I would still highly recommend that as reading for people. It just is as wonderful literature, so beautifully written.
Oh, it's just sad, really sad. But one person
yes.
pulls another one down and down and down the whole time, so, yeah.
Well, for more dysfunctional characters, next month we'll read Anxious People.
Oh, but that's wonderful. I read that because Jane liked it so much. Jane, I read that book because of you and I enjoyed it so much.
Did you enjoy it?
I thought it was hysterical.
It's a funny book.
It's called Anxious People.
Peculiar.
Yes.
Anxious People, yes, Frederick Bachman.
By who?
Frederick Bachman,
Frederick Bachman.
Anxious People.
Okay.
He wrote A Man Called Ove.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious.
It was funny. It was more predictable than this one.
Okay, all right, well, good, more fun, okay.
So that'll be November 2nd.
I know.
I know. And look how dark it was when I came. It was already dark. I had to turn my headlights on.
All right, thank you everybody for coming.